Hi everyone, it's Laisha with F The Stigma. I'm here to let you know that FTS is a nonprofit organization, and we have recently launched a medication assistance program to help fellow Marylanders get access to their necessary mental health medications. You can apply today on our website at fthestigma.com. You can also support this cause and program on our website as well. Thank you so much and enjoy the episode. We're in LA today, and I'm here with Jimmy. Welcome to the FTS podcast. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you, break the stigma on mental health addiction. So tell me a little bit about what you do today.
Oh man, well right now I've just been doing content, and I'm an artist. That's at the top of my list. That's what I identify as a visual artist. I'm a painter.
Oh, I love that.
So that's what I've been doing lately. That's actually how I started getting into content, because I was making so much visual art, and essentially I felt like I was releasing it into a void. So I realized the value of short form content. So I started making short form content to hope that it would drive traffic to my art.
For sure.
And it just happened to be the short form content that I made was personal to me. So it was drug related stuff, and it kind of was along the line of comedy with reality of true storytelling. And then it started going from there. And so yeah, right now I do content, I make art, I make music. I had a career building power lines, and I stopped doing that probably 2 years ago now. I had some medical issues, some neurological problems, but through that I was able to set up my life in a way where I was financially stable. And then now I'm able to pursue other avenues that I want to pursue,
Sweet. Do you find the importance of like comedic relief even when talking about our addiction?
For me, I find the comedic relief when I talk about anything.
Really?
So if I'm talking about, something non-drug related, it's the same part of me, Even when I was in my addiction, I found the comedic relief in what was going on,
Funny enough, I struggled a lot with like anxious laughter. Like that was a big issue I had like my entire life. It's kind of an issue now, but it's improved drastically. I would laugh at anything that made me anxious. Like I would be at a funeral, I would start laughing, but then like as my guard started slowly going down, I would start bawling my eyes out. It was just like I realized it was like an armor I was wearing, like a smile behind the pain.
Yeah, for sure.
It's beneficial though, because I do like lightheartedness, but it prevents me from actually like allowing myself to feel.
Yeah, the comedic relief in addiction or any suffering at all it's a real weird line to walk on, because essentially there's still people that are suffering like that, but once you've taken a step back, you kind of can see the insanity in what you were doing and find humor in how absurd your actions were. But then you also kind of have to remember, like, well, there's people still in there.
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily be like desensitized to the fact that, there's still someone laying in bed at 9 a.m. with their heart rate at 190 because they were up all night doing drugs, when they just said they were going to go to Buffalo Wild Wings for a beer, Like, it's funny to say after the fact, but there is still people suffering in that world, So the comedy thing, at least the public comedy thing, it is kind of a weird world where it's like, well, I don't want to poke fun at people suffering, but I'm poking fun at my own past suffering,
For sure. Tell me a little bit about your experience with addiction. How long was it? How did it get started?
Well, it was already going before I think I even realized I was in it, It started just, weed. I started smoking weed going from 8th to 9th grade. 9th grade, I started going through the family medicine cabinet, finding pills, Vicodin, take Vicodin, smoke weed, and then started drinking alcohol and mix it all together, take some Vicodin, drink some alcohol, smoke some weed, and I was escaping myself, but I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was just having a good time, But the reason I was having a good time is because I was no longer feeling like myself. And that's what was alluring to me, you know? So it went from there, you know, because I smoke weed and would escape myself and I liked it. I would drink alcohol, I would escape myself, and I would like it. Take pills, I would escape myself. So then when new things got introduced to me, I'm like, well, I like these other things, you know, so I'll probably like cocaine, you know? So I
Yeah.
did cocaine. I'm like, oh, well, I super escape myself through cocaine. I really like this. Mix it all together. It's great. I'm not even myself at all anymore, you know? So that was in 10th or 11th grade. I started doing cocaine.
Wow.
And then by 12th grade is when I came across crystal meth.
Oh shit.
So, and then crystal meth, you do that and you're like, oh, forget about all those other ones. This is you know, this is it. You know, I found the one for me, you know, because you just, you know, it's initially crystal meth and I'll never champion it. You know, at the end of the day, it destroys everyone. But initially, the crystal meth high is amazing. You know, like you feel great, you know, you escape yourself. You just are in a state of euphoria. You know, you feel productive, you feel ambition, you know.
What is like your head telling you when you're on crystal meth, and like what are the physical effects?
There's different stages to it as you become a chronic user, you know. So the initial use of it, it's just all positive stuff. Like you feel in a way where you're like, well, this is how I was always supposed to feel. Like this is amazing, you know. But what ends up happening is you destroy that part of your brain and you can no longer feel that way anymore. So the first time you use it, you know, you feel 100% amazing. The next time you feel 90% amazing. And it slowly deteriorates your ability to feel anything to where you're not feeling any percent amazing anymore. You're just not getting sick. You're just trying to keep yourself normal functioning through your day.
Is it a physically dependent? Like,
It's physically, yes. It's physically and mentally.
what does withdrawal from that look like?
The craziest, it's an anxiety I can't even describe. It's like a physical, emotional, mental anxiety. And especially when I would withdraw from crystal meth, I was on like a crazy run, you know. It was like 24/7, 365. It's all I did. You know, I'd eat some Nutri-Grain bars in between, but it was mostly just crystal meth. So when I would withdraw, I was always in jail. So I was dealing with like my entire nervous system going in shock, you know, like the nerves in my body coming back to life, you know. And so it was just like a physical pain. It was like I would just cry uncontrollably because my brain was starting to function properly or attempting to. It was going between a world of a broken brain and a brain going back into normal function, you know.
For sure.
And that transition is just overwhelming. It's something that is I can't even explain in words the shock that you deal with.
For sure. You grew up in California, right?
Yes, I grew up in California.
What do you think motivated you to just even like, I understand like, well, we run into weed, like kids in school. It's like, yeah, we're smoking weed. And it's like, because that's what happened to me. It's like, I knew my dad was smoking weed. And I didn't like the idea of that because it caused like issues in the household. But then kids at school are starting to smoke weed. And I was like, wait, so maybe it's like a cool thing that people do. I want to try it. How did you kind of even start with substances? Was there like a motivator? What even, like, how did you even think of like, yeah, actually, let me look through the medicine cabinet and see what I can find for a different high?
I think initially it was just exposure to weed. I don't think there was much thought to why I was doing it. I just was with some friends who were smoking weed and I tried it and I liked it, you know. As far as the reason why it snowballed so bad, I think it was something biologically going on with my specific brain that drew me towards substances. I don't think it was like a social factor or I don't think I intellectualized it. I think it was just the anxiety that my specific biological brain has was just drawn towards substances as a form of escape. And that wasn't something I realized during my addiction. Sure. That was something once I got sober and reflected on these years I had spent addicted to drugs. Like, why? Like, what was I doing? Like, why couldn't I stop this, you know? And That's what I came up with. It was just some sort of biological thing that just, once I introduced chemicals into my brain's like more of this,
Yeah, for sure.
because it's definitely not cool to smoke crystal meth when you're 17 years old.
No,
No one's
definitely.
like, oh man, look at that guy. He didn't sleep last night.
Yeah.
So I don't think it had any social aspect to it really.
Even today, looking back, I remember even in the midst of my addiction, my brother asking me like, "Why are you like so hooked on Xanax? Like, what's the big deal? Why are you escaping? Why do you feel the need to escape?" And I did not have an answer. And even being sober, sometimes I don't even think I have a real answer to that, or it's not something I believe, like to the 100%. Yeah, I don't know if it was because like of trauma or the racing thoughts or because of the social aspect. But I just know like once I started, I genuinely couldn't stop.
Yeah, sometimes I have this theory, and I'm sure it matches up somewhere with some sort of scientific explanation. But so I think as humans, we're just drawn towards dopamine. Not even like on a intellectual level. Just as a species, we're drawn towards dopamine. Even like natural things, like we eat and it releases dopamine. And as if you go back to like caveman times, that's how we know how to survive. We have sex and it releases dopamine, so we're drawn towards those things. We find warmth, we find relationships, and all these things release dopamine. So as an animal, the dopamine releases is essentially what's keeping us alive. It's telling us what we need to do to have our species survive. So I think what's happens is you introduce these external sources of dopamine like Xanax or methamphetamine or cocaine, and your brain is seeing is this dopamine spike.
Yeah.
It's not seeing why it's happening, and all your brain knows is if something releases dopamine, that's what we're drawn towards. So I think it creates this these two things fighting, where your rational mind is like, why do I continue to do this if it's destroying everything around me? But your animal mind is like, well, this is releasing dopamine, and that's what we search out. Whatever releases dopamine. We don't need an explanation, just whatever releases dopamine, because the brain doesn't function in a way where it's like, well, your mom's crying because you stole their TV. Your brain's just like, whatever caused this, do that again. The dopamine, we want the dopamine. And I chalked a lot of my addiction up to that. Once I was out of it, it was just like I was chasing dopamine, on a biological level, and any means necessary, I was gonna feed my brain what it wanted.
No, that makes sense. So you don't think, even looking back, that there was anything like mentally that you were trying to escape?
I think just the anxieties of myself, maybe, But I think it goes back to, it was the dopamine that was
For sure.
making me feel like I was escaping that,
Yeah.
And obviously I'm not a scientist. This could be the most tweaker explanation that someone has ever said,
Does that bother you, the word tweaker?
No.
No?
I embrace all the terms and,
all the labels and
Yeah.
names. That's good. I mean, there's a lot of power in, like, yeah, I'm a drug addict. Like, I'm an addict, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like we change that meaning for ourselves. Because I think at the end of the day, we're really lucky to be addicts. We get a second chance at life.
For sure.
Yeah, so you started doing crystal meth at 17. How did that happen? Your first time?
So I was doing cocaine a lot already.
Yeah.
Every day we were doing cocaine, and I started committing crimes pretty young too. So we were able to get money to fund our cocaine addiction. Me and a few of my friends who were on it just as bad as me, we learned about crime and different ways to do fraud and stuff, So we were able to get quite a bit of cocaine at a young age. And one day we called our cocaine dealers, and they all three were in the same spot. They were at this house. So we went to this girl's house. It was another girl we went to high school with. So we go there, and we're sitting at like some couches with our cocaine dealers and some other people. There's like some older people there, like in their 30s probably, or 17. And we're like passing the plate to them, and they're like, no, it's cool. And I remember thinking, like, what do you mean? What? There's so much coke on this plate, you guys don't want to do it, And shortly after that, this old man came out. It was an old Asian guy. The chick whose house we're at, it was an Asian girl. That's not important, but it kind of just paints a it paints a picture of what was going on. You know, he comes out and he has like a long gray beard and he has no shirt on, and he sits cross-legged on one of these couches, and he pulls out a crystal meth pipe, and he starts hitting it and he starts passing it around this circle of people, you know. And I look at my friend that I'm with, who is like my degenerate drug addict, you know, bestie. And we look at each other and we're just like, yeah, let's do it, you know. Like we knew what it was, you know. So it came around the circle to us and we did it, and it just, you know,
It was over.
It was over after that, you know. Once you do that, it's like, you know, once you drive a Lamborghini, the Mustang never feels the same.
So how are you doing fraud?
So the first thing that we would do, I remember we watched a documentary called the Montana Meth Project. It's an old documentary in the, you know, the early 2000s that just followed these meth heads in Montana. And in one of the scenes, it was showing how the meth head was making money. So they'd go to like a convenience store, Walmart or whatever, and they'd walk around the parking lot. They'd pick up receipts that people trashed. They'd dig through the trash cans and find receipts.
Oh, wow.
And then they'd get those cash receipts and they'd go in the store. They'd steal the item, then return the item with the receipt and get the cash back. So we found out about that pretty early, and then started developing different variations of that, you know, where we would just steal a bunch of stuff and then go in, get a gift card, and then the dealers would usually take a gift card at 50% value, you know.
Wow. These movies are teaching people how to commit crimes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
No, that one really did, for sure.
Then, yeah, what was that spiral like with meth?
So that was my first run when I was 17. I think I smoked it probably a year straight, 17 to 18. And it wasn't really that bad. I mean, it was bad. It wasn't as bad as it eventually got.
Wow.
Compared to where I was at the end of my drug use, the shit I was dealing with when I was 17 or 18 wasn't shit, you know. And then I had stopped doing it, and I was just doing a lot of coke and drinking and taking pills and taking a lot of psychedelics and stuff like that. And then I ended up getting reintroduced to meth again. And that second time around, it was a pretty quick decline. You know, I had a job. I was living with my parents. I had a truck. And it started off, you know, like a 20 sack every 4 or 5 days. You end up losing my job, getting kicked out of my house, losing my truck, riding a bike, and then the crimes get progressively worse, you know. So to give like a little idea about it, at the beginning, it was a 20 sack every 5 days. By the end of my addiction, a 20 sack was like 5 minutes.
Wow.
I would pack a 20 sack and I would just sit there and smoke it. It was just enough to get me well enough to go commit crimes to get more, you know. So it, you know, by the end of it, I was living on the street. I'd been living on the street for a couple of years. I was in and out of jail, mental hospitals, the whole, you know, regular hospitals. Abscessed teeth, like eight of my teeth just rotted down to the gum, you know.
Those aren't your teeth?
They're all in the back.
Oh, they're on the back. I was like, you have nice teeth.
They're all molars. Yeah. I tell people my teeth are business in the front, party in the back. No, I'm missing 8 teeth just from crystal meth.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was being homeless like? Tell me about it.
I mean, when you're high on a good day, I'm just gonna be honest about everything, you know. When you're high on a good day, when you got money and a bag of drugs, you know, it's not that bad because you don't got to sleep. You know, you're going from place to place. You're going from hotel room to girl to, you know, it's like a fast life of just like constant, you know. But the bad stuff is really bad, you know. When you don't have the money, when someone's robbing you, when you're getting busted, you're going to jail, or like you stayed awake for so long that your psychosis is so bad that you're running around the streets screaming because you think you have worms in your eyes, you know? So it had its ups and downs. Ultimately the downs severely outweighed the good. But yeah, I don't. I remember both. I have both memories. The days of like absolute suffering, and then the days where it's like, well, I didn't have any responsibilities. I didn't
Yeah.
have no one to answer to. I didn't have to worry about my economic situation or anything like that. So I mean, it's not great.
Yeah.
It's
I
not great.
believe it. What was that psychosis like? Meth psychosis.
It was bad. I got it really bad. I don't know if it's because I was going so hard, or if it's just my brain is unstable in that way. But I would stay up. I would stay up as long as I could, as long as I had drugs to fund my sleep deprivation. But it would get bad. I would have psychosis of like crazy interdimensional worms like living in my skin and my eyes and my teeth, and like it would just spiral and I would just lose my mind. I would have I remember there was one day I was in the bathroom of a Starbucks getting high, and obviously I'd been up for a while, and I started hearing people out in the Starbucks, and it was like my parents were out there, and like they were with the cops and they were talking to the cops, and then they were with some of my friends, and I'm like listening to them, and I'm like listening underneath the crack of the door from this Starbucks, and I must have been in the bathroom for like 2 hours,
Yeah.
just out there listening, like, oh man, I'm gonna walk out of this bathroom right now. My parents are out there, the cops are gonna arrest me. It's like this whole thing, and like I walk out there to just like a normal Starbucks, and stuff happening like that was like it was an everyday occurrence. It was it was insane.
Like when you're in that mindset,
It's
you
real.
think there's I believe you.
Yeah.
Like you think there's worms in your eyes, your teeth, under your skin. Like how do you slowly go back to sanity? If that makes sense. Like I'm trying to understand how you're like, wait, okay, I'm good
Like
now.
once you're
Or
sober.
I'm almost trying to understand like I personally, yeah, I've never experienced crystal
Well,
meth.
there was-
I was the downer girl. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to pass the fuck out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to black out, pass out. I want to not remember anything.
So when I was in sleep deprivation and I would have some crazy psychosis, and then let's say I go to sleep and I wake up, I'm not dismissing the fact that it wasn't real. I'm still, in a sense, in a delusion, but I'm just not actively experiencing it. I don't wake up in the morning and I'm like, man, that's crazy. Yesterday I thought there was worms in my skin, but today I don't. I just kind of am no longer in that active delusion, but I stay up that night, get a little bit more high, and it'd ramp back up and I'd find myself back in it again, and the thing about hallucinations or psychosis or delusions, like there's absolutely nothing different between reality and what isn't real at that point. The only difference is outsiders telling you that it's not real, but your actual experience in those moments is just as real as anything else. So it becomes hard to like, and then you start convincing yourself and justifying and telling yourself these crazy things like, well, I just figured out something that everyone else hasn't figured out yet. It's real. And like you make this story and this narrative to justify to yourself why you're not tripping, which just makes it worse,
So what would kind of take it away is sleep.
Sleep, typically, yeah. A lot of times with crystal meth, when you see people on the streets that are like crazy or hallucinating or screaming or talking to themselves, I don't think it's usually the meth. It's actually the sleep deprivation.
Wow.
Sleep deprivation, sober. Sober right now, if you stayed up for 4 days, you would start tripping out.
I think I did like I was awake for like 24 hours once,
Yeah.
and I started seeing things. Like
the
just in that
human
time.
mind is designed to sleep. And when you don't give it sleep, reality gets very shaky and very uneasy, where your own thoughts will start reflecting into an external experience, So like 3 days awake, sober, or on drugs, if you're like, oh shit, I think I heard something, your brain will start creating this reality based on your thoughts. It's a very strange thing.
For sure. So it kind of started bringing you to the end. because you said it was the crystal meth that basically brought you down to your bottom. You were doing cocaine, drinking, whatever. Like that was cool. But when crystal meth came in the picture, it was like this isn't.
Yeah, crystal meth was the main thing, you know.
Yeah.
It happened. So that last meth run, it was probably like 3.5 years, and that's of, like I said, 24/7, 365, unless I was in jail or a mental hospital.
I actually do also want to ask you with your experiences in the mental hospital.
Yeah, I'll go back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's progressive. You know, you get kicked out of your house, you lose all your normal friends, you lose your job, you lose your car, and this is just like the general pattern, you know, of addiction, especially crystal meth. There's no one that's stronger than this process of losing everything, you know. And I'm on the street. Sometimes I would find somewhere to stay, you know, for a month or two, squatting at like a trap house or, you know, some unsavory home, different things like that. And then my crimes started getting worse. At this point, my parents had a restraining order on me.
Wow.
Just because my psychosis was so bad. And plus I was a thief. So anything of value I stole from my parents, you know, the first year. And then the psychosis accompanied with violence, through the psychosis, you know, so I would be tripping out about something that wasn't real and would start showing signs of violent behavior. And that's probably one of the most dangerous things that you could be around is someone upset with you about something that isn't real, you know?
Yeah.
So my parents ended up getting a restraining order. Totally, you know,
Valid.
totally valid. My crime started getting worse. I started, you know, like I was saying, it started, you know, commercial burglary, just stealing stuff from Walmart. You know, by the end I was finding myself in houses I wasn't supposed to be in, you know.
Wow.
Which is not innocent crime, you know, like that's pretty serious shit. And then at the end I was squatting in an apartment. I had been staying there with someone. They left. I was squatting in this apartment for a couple weeks. No running water, no electricity. And then like the week before the last week, I remember it was one of the times I stayed up for like 7 days straight. It was like 130 pounds. Like my back and my bones were just so like malnourished that just like walking down the street was just miserable, like with pain and discomfort. My feet were like all disgusting, and I ended up getting kicked out of where I was squatting at that apartment. So I was back on the street, and I was like, well, fuck, this sucks. I need a good one today, you know, like I need a good come up, you know, on some money. So I decided to rob my parents' house. So I went to my parents' house. I rode a bike there. I jumped through their bathroom window. I like rummaged through their house. I ended up stealing it was like a jar of change. It was probably like $100 worth of change. I left, and I remember I bought some porno magazines. I bought like a 20 sack of meth. I brought a pipe, and I'm riding down the street. Now I'm high. I got my pipe. I got my meth. I got some porn, and I got the remainder of that change in like a little ice chest, like a little school ice chest. And I'm riding down the street, and the cops drive by me, and I'm like, fuck. I make eye contact with this cop. And she turns around, she pulls over. She's like, hey, what's up, James?
She knows you.
Oh, at this point, I was like a famous tweaker in my area. Like, they all knew me by name, you know?
Yeah.
So she stops. She's like, oh, what do you got there? Some stuff from your parents' house you robbed earlier?
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, like, well, it's change. How are they going to track my change back to my parents, you know? So she searches me, doesn't find the drugs on me, but I had 9 warrants. I had 9 arrest warrants. So they ended up taking me in, and long story short, she ended up finding the pipe. But before we go down to the jail, I told her I had it to avoid like, you know, worse consequences when they were inevitably going to find it. They just throw the pipe on the back seat of the cop car, and she's just like, we're just going to pretend like that didn't happen, you know?
Wow.
I still had the 9 warrants and plus the burglary charge. So I go to jail. They end up running all the cases concurrent. They gave me 90 days And that day ended up being my sobriety date.
Wow.
So I ended up doing those 90 days, and I had been to jail before, and I was committed to staying sober. And I thought just wanting to be sober was going to be enough to stay sober once I got out. So I had failed so many times, telling myself I was going to get sober and not, so this last time I was like, well, I got 90 days to figure it out, So those first days was just, misery. I was meditating a lot. I started repeating affirmations back to myself, because that's really all I could do. I was so like malnourished, and I would just lay there in bed and just like, I'm healthy, I'm sober, I'm gonna be successful, I'm healthy, and just for like
so you had kind of like a switch. You were like, I'm gonna start affirmations and like trying to get my shit together.
Yeah. So and I mean at that point I'm like, what do I have to lose? I'll try anything. I was praying, I was meditating, I was like doing visualization techniques. I had read a lot before I was super bad on drugs about just different like new age concepts and lots of Buddhist books. And, I had gathered a lot of information about the human mind that now I was able to apply, and I don't know which one worked. I mean, maybe it was a combination of all of them, I started working out a lot. Like I said, I would wake up, I would read, I would do my affirmations, I would meditate, I would work out, I would read, just, for the next 90 days, just because I was determined, like I got to figure something out, so I got released, and I was working out a lot. So once I got released, I got a gym membership. And those first few months I was in the gym like sometimes three times a day. Like I don't even know how that's possible. I'd wake up early in the morning. I'd go to the gym for an hour or two. I'd come home. I'd eat. I'd maybe like take a nap, go to the gym again midday, come back again, eat, and then go to the gym again at night. Every single day, all I was doing, I wasn't giving myself any time to do anything negative or have any negative thoughts. I was like, well, I know the gym creates some sort of positivity in my mind and my body, so I'm just going to keep doing what I know works, And I just kept doing that. And, 13 years later, I still,
still do it.
The gym is an essential part of my sobriety.
I'm just mind blown by I want to know where your head was at with like being done. I think you said, I thought wanting to be sober was enough.
Yeah. So the other times I had gotten, I'd gotten busted, and right when you get busted, something would go in my head where like, because at that time when I was using, I was miserable, like I had nothing. My body was broken down. It was a miserable lifestyle. So when I got busted, I was like, well, let's get sober, And I thought just saying, well, I'm going to get sober with no actual mental change or applications of something new internally, I thought I would just be like, well, I'm sober now. And that's not how it works. Like there's internal work you have to do, for at least for my experience, I learned, so that last time I was like, well, I need to figure something out. There's something I need to figure out, to stay sober, and, one of the biggest things I found out about myself, through that process was, my issue was impulse control. Like I didn't have any impulse control. I could tell myself I wanted to be sober, but as soon as I would have the idea of getting high, I would think about the idea, and then I would think about how I would feel, and I would think about getting the bag. I would think about getting the pipe. I would think about packing the pipe. I would think about lighting the bowl. I would think about hitting it. I would think about how I would and I would spiral into this fantasy in my head. And that fantasy was so strong that it would turn into action. Yeah, I would be like, well, it's like muscle memory. Like, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about my brain remembering the dopamine.
Yes.
My brain was like, oh, remember this? Like, this is what we want. So that moment was something I had to learn to change. I had to learn to change that moment of impulse, So what that looked like for me was when I would think about drugs, I would immediately go in the opposite direction. I would remember my abscessed teeth. I would remember how it felt sleeping outside. I would remember the delusions. I would remember the jail. I'd remember the fucked up relationships, my mom crying, So in that moment of impulsive thought, I would replace that fantasy with the reality, which was ultimately negative, you know.
Exactly.
And that's became a huge part of me being able to stay sober, was being able to control that single moment of impulse.
No, it's huge. Cause yeah, you're really right about the muscle memory. It's like we don't think of, we do start fantasizing and then it's like next thing I know, I'm getting high again.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell a lot of people that. A lot of people reach out to me about their struggles, you know. And if I think that's something that individual needs to hear, I'll tell them that process that worked for me, you know. Just because a lot of times it's confusing for an addict, especially if they have some clean time and they're like, I don't know why I ended up here again. Like, why did I do that? It causes me suffering and it destroys my life. And I was doing so good sober, you know? And I think a lot of times it has to do with that moment of fantasizing about the good times or like the pleasure part of the drugs and not the
Right.
reality of it destroying your life.
Yeah, because I have thoughts about getting high today, like all the time. It crosses my mind. You know, see a billboard of alcohol or even especially in California, driving down the road and you get a whiff of weed.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like,
Or even in a
damn.
swimming pool, you're like, man, imagine just laying there by the swimming pool with a cold beer, some music playing, some girls hanging out. You know, it would be so nice. But like, that's that fantasy.
Exactly.
Because my reality is I drink one beer, my inhibitions lower a little bit. And then I'll drink another beer, my inhibitions lower a little bit more. I drink that third beer. I'm no longer in control of the wheel. That third beer is drinking a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh beer. And now I have no more parts of my rational mind left, you know?
Yeah.
Now they're like, oh, hey, we're going to go downtown. Let's go downtown. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Now I'm driving. And now, you know, I'm a maniac when it comes to substances. So now I'd probably be driving with a tall can. There'd be girls, there'd be loud music. I'd be driving 120 miles per hour. We'd go to the bar. I'd get more fucked up. Someone looks at the girl I'm with. I punch this guy. I skid off. I drive. I fucking sideswipe a car. I take off. I hit a pedestrian. I go. I'm fucking freaking out. I'm like, fuck. Someone hits me up. Now I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm going to go get a bag of Coke. I'm tripping out. I get the bag of Coke. I'm like, well, this ain't cutting it. Get it back, you know? So I have to remind myself, like, my reality isn't that one Corona by the beer. I mean, by the pool with relaxing music and fucking Bob Marley playing. Like, that's not who I am. Like, my reality is fucking chaotic.
No, yeah, and that's what I remind myself, like the reality of the situation. That's what keeps me. That's how I ground myself with those thoughts. Because I don't think there will be a day where I never think about it again.
No, there will. I mean, I don't really have those. My fantasies don't get very drawn out. They get snuffed out pretty quick. You know, because it's replaced. My reality at this point has replaced the fantasy. Like I did that so much that now my impulsive thought is the reality behind it. You know, and the worst thing you could do is use others as a example of substance use, because you got to realize, you know, your example is different. You know, like. You'd be like, oh, well, so-and-so fucking is having a great time.
Yeah.
Why can't I have a great time? I could have a great time too.
We fantasize about being able to use just like everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, we're sick, dude. We got fucked up brains.
Speaking about that, what was your experience in psychiatric facilities?
So the first time I went to one, I was actually pretty young. I think I was 16 years old.
Wow.
It was there was sleep deprivation involved. There was cocaine. There was some psychedelic drugs, and I had a mental break. I essentially came to the conclusion that I was God, and I fucking lost my mind. I ended up jumping out of a moving car, throwing like a book at someone, like a fucking math book at someone's head, and then I was in the street, like punching myself in the face until I knocked myself to the ground. People I was with drove away, obviously, and they called the cops. The ambulance showed up, and I'm like, dude, I don't want to get in this ambulance, you know? And they're like, look, you get in our ambulance or you wait till the cops get here. Like, you can't just be running around the streets high out of your mind on cocaine and think you're just going to do whatever you want, you know? So they ended up taking me, and then I was at the hospital in a bed, still thinking about how I was God. And I'm like, why? I don't understand. How do I maneuver this? Like, I'm God. Why am I in this hospital? Like, I should be able to just get up and leave. So I got up and started walking out, and they're like, hey, what do you think you're doing? I'm like, leaving. They're like, no, you're not. I ended up like tackling me and literally strapping me
Wow.
to a gurney. Then I went to I was a minor, so I was in a psychiatric hospital for minors. They do the 5150, which is a 72-hour evaluation. And then I remember I sat at like a table with like the management people of the psychiatric hospital. And they had clipboards, and they're like, yeah, so on this day, one of our employees witnessed you saying this and this to another patient. And it was some made up shit. It was like some shit I've never said in my entire life. Like, I hate you and I want to kill you. And I remember in my brain, I was like, that didn't happen. And I fucking freaked out in the middle of this fucking evaluation board at a mental hospital. I fucking flipped out. I started screaming. I stood up. I was like flailing around all crazy. And then they were like, yeah, we're gonna keep you here for another 2 weeks. So I'm like, fuck, you know? So I ended up staying there for 2 weeks. And I remember my mom brought me a bunch of books that I had, and one of them was the Buddhist, is it the Sevenfold Path or Eightfold Path? One of those. It was a Buddhism book. And I just read the Buddhism book, and I just used that time to like study, you know, like study myself, which ultimately didn't, you know, I took in the information, but I wasn't applying it, you know.
Of course.
And then the other times I was in psychiatric hospitals were mostly from sleep deprivation, from crystal meth, where I just thought something crazy was going on. You say the wrong thing, and you're going in there for 3 days, you know. It's in California at least, it's a very delicate process. Like, if you say something, these key words or key phrases, like by law, they have to detain you and evaluate you.
I'm curious though. Did she say you said those things to see how you would react? Was
Yeah.
it true that what she said? It was like genuinely made up.
It was made up.
And they were
Which
just
is
like,
hard for me to dispute, because I'm the guy in the mental hospital. So they could be like, well, who are you to fucking say it didn't happen, you know?
Yeah.
But looking back, I'm like, no, they were testing me.
Yeah.
And it's probably a common test they do. Like, how is this person going to react to something not going their way? And I failed.
I'm curious on the effect on the mental effect on your brain all of this had. The years of crystal meth use,
Years of
cocaine
abuse.
use, years of sleep deprivation. Was there, like, when you got sober, did you notice an effect on your mental health? And if so, like, what was that, like, recovery process like?
It's hard to analyze that, because I don't know what behavior or what effects is just normal and what is different, you know. And I don't think even before I started getting into drugs, I already don't think I was normal. Like, not that I was like, I think my brain just has always worked a little different. It's always organized things a little different. It's always expressed itself a little different. But as far as, I don't know what is just my character and what is brain damage, essentially, you know.
But what was your experience? Like, was there anything you noticed, normal or not?
There is one memory that stands out. It was probably a month after I had gotten out of jail. So that means I was 4 months sober. I'd been going to the gym a lot. And I remember I was having issues with like my heart. Like, I don't know if I was actually having issues with my heart, but I just remember I would lay in bed and like I would get like this like the nerves in my body would like just I can't explain it. It was like this cold feeling, and like my heart and my breathing would do something weird. And like I remember laying on the floor of my parents' house, and at the time both my parents lived there. And I had been trying so hard to just like be strong and like face this sobriety and like all the fucked up shit I did and recover from it, like physically. And I was going to the gym, I was working out, I was like doing the right thing. And like, I just felt like I just wasn't making enough progress. Like, mostly in how I felt physically. Not like I didn't think I looked fucking good, but like the physical discomfort I felt in my body. And I remember I was laying on the floor of my parents' house and I just had like a mental break. It just all came out and I was like crying and I was just like, I just broke down and my parents were like, what's wrong with you? And I just feel like, and I just remember saying like, I feel like I damaged myself too much and I can't go back. I can't like reverse what I did, you know? And that moment was short lived. And the next morning I got back on it, you know, I went back to the gym and did what I had to do. But I do remember that moment where it was just like,
Sometimes we need that like good cry of like grieving what the fuck we just did for so long.
oh yeah. Yeah. And it's all overwhelming, you know? But then also I think in those moments is like a critical moment for someone where they're overwhelmed and they feel defeated. And at that point you kind of have two directions you could go. You'd be like, well, I'm defeated. Like I ruined my life. I ruined my body. I'm just going to give up. I might as well keep getting high. Might as well go get a bag right now, you know? Or you go in the other direction where you're like, no, let's keep fucking going. Like, let's keep powering through it. Let's keep trying. Let's keep fucking working for it, you know? And then, you know, that's the way I decided to go, you know?
You said 13 years of sobriety?
July will be 13 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What has it been like? Because you said you're doing music, painting.
Yeah, so when I got sober, I didn't have anything. Luckily, I have a family, you know. A lot of people don't have that.
Also, I am curious, like, how was repairing that relationship with your parents? People who had a restraining order on you, and
I'm sure they were reluctant.
sure.
But people deserve chances. At a certain point, you run out of chances. And I was young enough. I don't think I had ran out of all my chances yet. And then a lot of people have the problem where their family is the problem. So they get out of jail and they want to get better, and they actually have to separate themselves from their family. You know, I'm blessed enough to have like a loving family that cares about me, and so I was able to go back there, you know. But I didn't have anything. I didn't have a car. I had negative $20,000 of court restitutions.
Wow.
I didn't have a job. I didn't have any skills, and I was, you know, missing a bunch of teeth now, and you know, I had destroyed relationships.
Starting from scratch.
Yeah. So I ended up getting a job at like a car wash, like repairing cracks in windows. I lasted there for like 4 days, and I'm like, if this is fucking
life
now, like I ain't doing it, dude. I'm not doing this shit.
Yeah.
And I just bounced. I met a girl around that time. She was working at my gym at the front desk. Super beautiful girl, you know, and I'd come from being a street urchin, and I meet this girl and she's like an angel, you know. To me at the time, I'm like, oh, this girl's beautiful. Like, she's normal. She's not a drug addict, and she likes me. And I think that helped a lot with my self-esteem, you know, like, oh, I still got some in the game, you know. And then I quit that job at the car wash. I started working like random weekends with my dad, or random weekends with like a family member, like just doing mindless physical labor, you know. I ended up saving up enough money to buy a little car. I bought like a 95 Honda Accord.
Love it.
Sorry.
You're good.
For like $1,100. I had this car, and then someone offered me a job at working in the yard at like some company, like a yard guy. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that sounds cool. You know, it's a higher paid job. You know, I had benefits. It was a union job.
Nice.
I still had $0. You know, I remember I borrowed $90 from my best friend to pay my union dues. So I start that job. Now I'm making all right money, and I just ended up moving up in that that industry. I got my commercial driver's license. I ended up getting on a crew, and this was probably over the course of 5 years. And then I was making, you know, multiple 6-figure income.
Wow.
And then I bought a house, I bought a truck, I bought a car, you know, I bought all this shit. I had a 401k, full benefits, you know, I had, you know, all this stuff. And I was doing that for a while. And then I started having this weird medical thing going on. And I started like losing my vision at work real bad.
Whoa.
And it wasn't like a week. This has nothing to do with recovery, but it's just part of my story, I guess. I started like losing my vision real bad. And I ended up going to the doctors and they're like, it's not your eyes, it's something neurological going on with your brain. So I ended up having to step back, step away from my job, essentially my career, and started the process of figuring out what was going on with that. MRIs, you know, CT scans, sleep studies, blood tests, all this stuff. And essentially what they found out is my brain, the like electricity in my brain like spazzes out. And when it spazzes out, to protect itself, it suppresses the electricity in your brain. And when my brain suppresses the electricity, it like shuts off like communication with my eyes or like communication with like cognition. So sometimes I'm like completely fine. And then sometimes I have a hard time just formulating sentences, or like my vision, like as I sit here right now, like my vision is like totally screwed up, but,
Wow.
it's one of those things where it's like, it is what it is.
So at any moment you could like not really know how to speak.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, and it's another one of those moments where it's like, I could either lay down and cry about it, or I could, okay, let's keep going. Like what next? Like what do we do next? And then around that time is when I started, you know, having a bunch of content go viral. So I'm like, okay, well, this is something, like this is happening for a reason, and congruency with the other shit going on. So maybe this is the next path that I'm supposed to go down, you know? So I managed to, you know, make some money through that. And that's kind of what I've been doing now, you know?
There's not a name for what you're struggling with?
Yeah, it doesn't sound cool though. Yeah, essentially it's called a complex migraine. Which is
It sounds more than a complex migraine.
yeah, but that's what it classified it as.
Yeah.
Which people think migraines are a headache, but a complex migraine is actually with the electricity in your brain.
Wow.
So that's usually why it's kind of a weird thing where like I don't start the conversation with that, because they're like, this guy gets headaches, so he can't work. Really, you know, it's a whole
Yeah.
other thing. You know, I wish they named it something else.
You like have a resentment towards his name
Yeah.
right now. No, when you
Yeah.
definitely start off with the explanation.
But I mean, at levels, it's a absolutely like completely debilitating thing. Like
For sure.
when the electricity in my brain suppresses, like like the structure of living reality deteriorates. Like my brain's no longer able to understand like shapes and human speech, and
Holy
it's all this stuff shuts down, you know?
When was the last time this happened?
Like a bad episode, like complete shutdown, probably 7 months ago. But every day I deal with it at a certain level, you know?
Okay.
Like sometimes it's just the vision thing. Sometimes it's the cognitive aspect of it. Sometimes it'll be like the nerves in my body and stuff like that, you know? But what can you do, you know?
Yeah.
They started putting me on all these medications. It was just like, here, try this. And it's like, well, this one's causing impotence, but I still have the headaches, you know? So how about we try something else? And then they're like, here, try these two together. And I'm like, okay, well, this one, I'm just asleep all day, so I guess I'm not having migraines. But I don't want to do that either. And then it ended up, I was taking like 2 different medications twice a day, and I had to inject my leg with some medication once a month.
What are your thoughts on all of that with the like trial and error process with medication?
Well, so that was something actually I experienced through that, you know, because my first appointment at the neurologist, before we did any MRIs or anything, they prescribed me a medication. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, that sounds backwards. Like, I don't want to start introducing chemicals in my body before we even do any tests. And then he had to get the senior fucking neurologist, and he got all these neurologists to come in the room and talk to me. And they're like, look, like, we're giving you this medication, and if it doesn't get better, we can eliminate possibilities from what it might be. And then how they explained it to me, it made sense. Like, we'll give you this, and since you're not getting better, then we know it's not that. And then we'll give you this, and we know it's not getting better, we know it's not that. So then they're able to try different avenues with different medications.
It's frustrating, but
it was very frustrating.
His explanation makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's some though I don't think should be categorized like that. Like, you shouldn't be like, well, someone has neck pain, let's give them OxyContin. Like, let's see some other avenues first before we do that. Or someone has anxiety, let's give them Xanax. Xanax is the craziest thing to me. The fact that Xanax exists and is given to people, to anybody, is insane to me. I do not advocate the use of Xanax. I'm obviously not a doctor. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I don't advocate the use of Xanax to anyone at any level for any reason.
Why?
It causes the problem that you're trying to treat. You know, like the Xanax might temporarily relieve the anxiety, but the anxiety it induces once it's coming out of your body is probably more severe than the anxiety that it was getting rid of. And over time, your what word am I looking for? Your need for more. Your tolerance. Your tolerance just continues going, where it's like, well, that 0.25 Xanax relieved my anxiety, but after 6 months, that 0.25 didn't do shit. So now I'm on a 0.50. And now after 6 more months, that 0.50, and with Xanax, you'll just keep going down that road until you're taking 4 milligrams of Xanax a day. And now you can't stop taking Xanax. You'll die. You'll literally die if you stop taking Xanax. And it's like, that person that was taking that 0.25 had no idea they were going to end up in a position where they were taking an amount where they had to take Xanax. Now, to get off the Xanax, they have to go through an entire process of detoxing from it. And now you're detoxing off Xanax to get off Xanax. Well, guess what? You're in the same spot you were at before you started taking the Xanax. Why did you even start that road at all? You know, like, why did you even get down that path to get to that 4 milligrams where you had to detox off it? You know, like, did you try exercise before? Did you try altering your diet? Did you try changing like behavior or all these different things that you could have tried before a psychiatrist was just like, here, take this. Oh, this works. Take more of my money. Let me get more Xanax. You know, like, I think there's 100 different things you need to try before you try psychiatric medications. You know, obviously I'm not a doctor. Maybe I'm saying something super fucked up and irrational right now, but
what you're saying is connecting dots in my brain. I'm like 100%. This makes sense.
Yeah.
I would love to hear the other opinion, but like, I'm down. I'm on your team right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I have friends that are like, you don't understand how bad my anxiety is. And they're right. You can't compare tummy aches to anyone else, you know, like, you can't say someone's suffering more or less than you know, like, you don't know what this person's going through. But also, it's like, how often do you move your body? How often do you get the blood pumping through your body? Like, the human body is made for movement and muscle stimulation and blood flow, and for it to function properly. And if you're not doing these basic things for your body to function properly, like, why do you think you wouldn't feel anxious? You know, like, you're not feeding your body what it needs to be fed, like, probably dietary wise or movement wise or anything like that, you know? So I would like, if they're put people on mandatory physical training to be prescribed Xanax. Like, okay, yeah, you're a candidate for Xanax, but you need to come to our gym 7 days a week for 6 months, and we'll see if the problem persists. And I would bet anything that probably 95% of those people with anxiety, that problem would probably go away before they were given a fucking medication, you know?
I agree. Are you on any medication for mental health besides for the complex migraines?
No, and I don't take that medication anymore either, because it didn't help.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was on, I'll backpedal a little bit, and I'll put my fucking foot in my mouth right now. I had been prescribed a bunch of stuff throughout my life. I've been diagnosed with a bunch of things: ADHD, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, growing up throughout my whole life, you know, they were
Wow.
always like, this is this what you have, you know. And I think it was just the inability to manage my emotions, you know. So I had these files of these drugs that I was prescribed. So when I went to jail, when I was withdrawing from drugs, I was like, hey, can you guys get me my medication? Just because I was like, dude, I need fucking something to fucking, like something, you know? So I was taking low dose of non-narcotic it was basically an antihistamine, or it is an antihistamine. It was called like Visperidol, I think, something like that. It was just slowed me down a little bit. But once I got out of jail, I stopped taking that stuff. So I don't know if I just totally fucking made myself sound like a hypocrite for the rant I just went on.
But that was when you were in jail.
It was when I was in jail,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't perceive you as a hypocrite.
Yeah, and it was a non-narcotic, you know. It's basically fucking Benadryl.
No, like even in treatment centers, people like when I was in treatment, I didn't feel as if I really needed medication. But they prescribed me a bunch of things. I talked to a doctor. He's like, "You're gonna have Lexapro and you're gonna have hydroxyzine." So I was like, "Yay, pills I get to take while I'm here. Hopefully, I feel a little sleepy or drowsy or whatever it is." So it's like, you know, I was there.
Yeah. I think I didn't continue taking it because I realized that what I was doing mentally, taking that psychiatric medication, was just part of my sickness in a different form. Like
100%.
I was just relying on an external thing to change how I felt, so I didn't have to figure out the puzzle myself, you know. And as long as you're relying on an external source to change how you feel, and you're avoiding that puzzle, you're never going to grow. You know, it's being faced with those moments of anxiety or depression and figuring it out on your own that is the stimulus for growth. You know. And I think a lot of times with like depression medications and anxiety medications and all those things, you're losing out on so much growth because you're not facing those problems, you know? Like if I sit in my room and I'm like, I'm fucking anxious right now, let me take a Xanax and then I feel better. Or if I sit in my room and I'm like, well, I don't fucking take Xanax. What do I have to do? Let me go for a fucking run. Let me go to the gym. Let me talk to some friends. Let me express myself to someone. Let me create some art. And then all of a sudden that problem goes away, you know? And as long as you're relying on a pill to deal with that problem, you just missed that part of the puzzle, you know?
I hear you.
And I realized that early in my sobriety, and that's why I had stopped taking the psychiatric medication.
I hear you. Do you believe that people out there like genuinely do need medications? Or do you think a lot of it can just be fixed by diet?
Because there's like there's extremes, you know, there's people with full-blown schizophrenia, and if they weren't basically turned into a zombie, which a lot of schizophrenic medication does, they'd probably kill someone. You know, they'd probably get so wrapped up in like their own fucking delusions that they might be dangerous, you know? So can I say like that person shouldn't take medication? You know, like you can't say it at that point, you know, but that's an extreme case. How many people are extreme cases, and how many people are just not implementing healthy behavior?
I hear you though. I really do.
What are your thoughts on that? Same?
I definitely think we can avoid medication in a lot of different ways. It could be therapy, different therapies, physical activity. I definitely think diet plays a huge role, so I really do agree with you on that. Because like I'm sure if I just stopped moving and stopped eating decently and started spending a lot of time in my head and stopped just going to therapy and talking to my friends and having fellowship and community, I'm sure like I'd be like, yeah, I think I need anxiety and like depression medication right now. Like I think I probably could drive myself to that point, just myself. But I do believe I've witnessed, and I've had a schizophrenic on the podcast, and I'm like, the medication wasn't taking away all of her hallucinations and all of the different schizophrenic like side effects, but it improves them. But I definitely do think there are a lot of people in the world that are overprescribed that are on medication that don't need to be. I definitely do think it's a case by case thing, and yes, like we should try those natural solutions first, and then reevaluate.
Yeah, you should try everything first before you get someone dependent on a drug.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people I would say with like crippling anxiety. I'm like, yeah, maybe medication is the best route for
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
I definitely do believe it's a case by case basis. But I also don't know that I'm not a doctor. I don't know that much about the brain and chemical imbalances. Like I've had people on the podcast before come on and say chemical imbalances aren't a real thing, and I'm like, wow, now you put that in my head. I don't know if I believe you or not, but like that could be a possibility.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and then even at a certain point, you have to think like, I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but how qualified is a doctor who's never experienced anxiety and overcoming anxiety naturally? Like, how qualified is he to say anything about your anxiety?
Yeah.
Like, he went to school, he read things in a book. Like, he's part of the same system that is benefiting from prescribing you this medication. Not only that, he knows this medication is going to work. He's going to give you this medication and your anxiety is going to go away without a doubt. No effort put into it, you know? But then you talk to someone who has not even a high school diploma, but has faced anxiety and overcame anxiety through different methods. Like, I think at that point, that person probably becomes more qualified than that fucking doctor, you know? Maybe not for all cases, but, you know, in a certain way, like the experience is a qualification more than the schooling, you know?
100%.
And that's same with like with substance abuse. Like a doctor could read a million books about substance abuse.
I doubt many doctors do.
Yeah. I mean, but even if they did, to not actually experience it, the dude who was living on Skid Row who got his life together is probably a more qualified opinion than that doctor, you know? And yeah, I don't know. It's like that scene in Good Will Hunting.
Haven't seen it.
You've never seen Good Will Hunting? Oh my God. Have you seen Good Will Hunting? Yeah. You know the scene I'm talking about? They're sitting on a bench and he's like,
oh, he's like, you read all that shit in a book.
yeah. But can you tell me what the Sistine Chapel smells like?
No, I love this conversation. I really do. And it gets me thinking.
It's
like,
crazy. And then and we haven't even talked about the business side of Big Pharma, which is most likely fucking propelling the entire thing. Like it's kind of crazy that the largest industry in the United States, it appears that they're giving people things that they don't actually need, that they could have found another route to fixing, that they're making billions of dollars off of. Like, it seems really strange, doesn't it? You know? And not only that, they're extremely habit forming to the extent where you'll die. Your body will seize up if you stop taking these drugs.
Right.
And they're making billions of dollars off of this shit. It seems so obviously crooked.
One last thing I'll say about that is like my experience in treatment, because I got sober through a rehab, a detox and residential, and then did like the step down phases of that. I got so much benefit from like the technicians and the people in charge being people with lived experience with addiction. Like they almost knew like the exact right things to say to me.
Oh yeah.
But the doctor I was talking to on the fucking tablet, you know, he was nice. He was a nice guy, but like he isn't someone with lived experience and just prescribed me 2 medications with talking to me for like 10 minutes.
It's like if you looked at a Rubik's Cube that's solved and the doctor was like, this is how the Rubik's Cube is supposed to be. And you're like, mine doesn't look like that. And he's like, yeah, well, this is how it's supposed to be. And he never solved the Rubik's Cube. But you talk to someone who solved it, they could tell you like the patterns you need to fucking go through to get it to look like that. But the doctor's never solved it. All he's done is seen the end result and is trying to tell you like, look like this, you know? But you need to talk to someone who's actually solved the fucking equation to learn how to fucking get to the final result.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate you having this conversation with me today
Yeah,
and
thanks
coming
for
all the way
having
out
me.
here.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for coming on, sharing your story, breaking the stigma, talking about your experience with your own mental health, your challenges, and everything. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. That was great.